The pain, the discomfort, I always say, is a small reminder about where I am now versus where I've been. Our bodies can't actually remember pain, they just fear pain. But I find if I don't talk about it, it doesn't actually exist. The more I talk about it, I can start feeling it again. I am probably going to be discomfortable the rest of my life. What I can do is just my response to the situation.
Exactly. Every journey has a story, and every story has the power to heal. My story hasn't been ordinary. I was adopted, I'm a survivor of abuse and trauma, and I have more than a dozen siblings. That's just the beginning of my story. Life has taken me on a long and winding road of healing and personal growth, a journey that ultimately led me back to myself and the path I was meant to walk. Along the way, I discovered that stories have power, the power to connect us, to help us grow, and even to help us heal. This is Travel Time Stories with Shannon. Real journeys, real stories, and real healing. Welcome back to Travel Time Stories with Shannon, where we explore not just the places we go, but the journeys that shape who we become. I'm your host, Shannon, from the Lone Star State of Texas, and I'm joined by my co-host, Ann from Missouri.
Hi, everybody. Today's episode is a powerful one. We're talking about traumatic brain injury, survival, and what it really means to rebuild your life when everything changes in an instant.
Tonight, we're joined by Nicholas Ruchlewicz, traumatic brain injury survivor and mental health advocate. After life-altering motorcycle accident, Nicholas faced a long and difficult road, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally.
But what's incredible about Nicholas is how he's reframed that experience, not just as something he survived, but something that actually transformed him.
Nicholas, we're so grateful you're here to share your story. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ann and Shannon. I appreciate you having me on.
So let's start back at the beginning. Take us back to before your accident. Who were you then, and how did you see your life unfolding?
So I just had a rough separation and divorce. It wasn't easy, and that's kind of where my journey with therapy really. I did therapy when I was a kid. There was some violence against me, so I needed to go into therapy when I was in high school. I was homeschooled my last year. So I was familiar with therapy, but when I was in my previous marriage, I was trying to learn how to help, handle our situation with my spouse and how to help them. And then through that, I learned how to help myself. And that's really where my journey through therapy was. That was in 2010. Go to therapy. How do I help? How do I help and learn how to start helping myself? Cognitive. I learned. My therapist taught utilize cognitive behavioral therapy to kind of challenge me to kind of get through it, and that's what I used. I always say the hardest thing I ever went through was a separation and divorce. Over my trauma was physically hard, but at least people in my the hospital, they were ready to help me and try to support me. It wasn't about taking or hurting like separation was. But I always like to say nothing's more exciting than a 35-year-old male living in his renting out his mother's basement. That's really fun for most young adult men. But I just got separated, and I was just trying to kind of rebuild myself. And I had a lot of friends, acquaintances that rode motorcycles, and I've had my license for about a year. So I was excited. I, just got a lot of financial burden with that, and then I decided to make it all happen again. But so I got a bike, and I was really excited. I had my license from like November or a little before October year before, and then I got a new bike, but it just snowed like the beginning of March, and I didn't want to ride my bike on the road because of the salt. I'm in Northern Virginia, so there's our weather in March is always crazy, and the salt is everywhere, and I didn't want to mess up a nice new Harley's paint job. So I decided that I would just And again, I was separated, so I had a big storage unit that I had all my stuff in when I was with my mother. So that's where my bike was stored. It was in my storage unit. So it's a two garage storage unit, and I would ride it at night, every day for roughly about a week or so. And then one night on March 15th, 2016, on the Ides of March and Traumatic Brain Injury Awareness Month. So double jeopardy. My mother, said, got home and my dogs were acting up, and she said, where's Nicholas at? My brother had no idea. So she called my girlfriend. She didn't know where I was. So my girlfriend reached out to someone on Facebook, and Facebook gave someone else her number. So they were able to call this, and they all came to the storage unit where I was. Called the police. They couldn't get in. It was locked, and they didn't see any trouble. So the buddy of mine that came down, he ended up breaking in, because the cop said if he goes in, it's not breaking and entering, the police officer. So that was at roughly 11:22. The last time they saw me on camera was 7:30 at night, and the paramedics showed up roughly at 11:22. Fortunately, my family never saw my
Wow.
body where it was. I was technically not unconscious. I was responsive when the paramedics came there. I made noises when they would try to talk to me, but I impact. If I would have gone 6 feet over, would have gone in the road, but it doesn't matter. I impacted a wall. I separated my pelvic circle. I broke my sacroiliac.
Mm.
I crushed my
Oh my
left orbital. I have a
gosh.
massive concussion, right side brain bleed, subdermal hematoma. So I would say just a little bit of trauma. I was taken right to the level 1 trauma center in
Mhm.
DC area, in Virginia, Inova, Fairfax, where I was taken right up there, right into the trauma ICU. They were concerned right away with all the internal bleeding. Fortunately, I had no external abrasions. I have one little cut by my eye. Everything else was all internal, or I would have bled to death. There is no question about it. And I lost a lot of weight before it. So otherwise, I would have, again, it would have been bad if I had a cut. But nonetheless, they were worried about the bone piercing my brain, but fortunately, it was just swelling. They didn't actually have any brain surgery, but they were also very worried about the internal bleeding from the pelvic injury.
Yeah.
So every brain injury is different, and so I was never unconscious, but I wasn't cognizant for roughly 12 days. People would come in the room, and I would, respond to them, or my girlfriend would be like, "Look, we're gonna go get dinner," and just to get me to eat and stuff like that, to try to, speak to them, or try to, do whatever. So every brain injury is different. So mine was right side. Right side of the brain controls left side of your body. It's also a lot of times how you see in space, a lot of your emotional wellness or your response, your compulsivity. It is your analytical thoughts, your executive, problem solving. That's right side brain injury. Left is generally a lot of speech, writing, and so I could definitely kept talking a lot. But like I said, every injury is different, and they had to tie me down in bed and tie my arms down, because when they didn't, like, I say that movie Face Off's full of
Right.
it, because my face was ear to ear, and they pulled down my eyes, to redo my eye socket. But I pulled the staples out of my head. I pulled the intubator out. One day I stood up and urinated on the floor, and they found out I broke the sutures in my pelvis. So now I have a metal
God.
chain, a metal plate that holds it together. So
Wow.
that was
You were a
a
model
lot of.
patient, weren't you?
I wouldn't. Let me just say, I wouldn't want to be that modeling agency, but I was definitely. I did ask if I had a gold. Why is there not a gold star in the hospital? Because the insurance paid for $875,000 of all their surgeries. So, but again, my brain wasn't out in. I recognized certain things. I thought they were dreams, but obviously it was my brain coming into lucidity. But it was interesting because my girlfriend would play when I was going through pain spikes, blood pressure would rise. She would play my radio station that I really listened to. I made a typo negative gothic metal station. It's always listened to after because before I got separated, what kind of inspired me was just listening to music, walking my dogs, and that kind of gave me the strength. So it gave me a lot of peace. But it was interesting. So when the music would come on, you could literally see my blood pressure lower, and I mean, it
Mhm.
lowered it when my brain was out. And then I was one day I woke up, as I always say, and then I found out, like, when I was being transferred to a rehabilitation hospital where I had to relearn how to do everything, and non-weight bearing for 12 weeks.
What was that early recovery period like, physically and mentally for you?
So the hard part is, like, so I volunteer now with Trauma Survivors Network, and I volunteer at the hospital where I was a patient. And I always say I feel disingenuous sometimes because I have zero memory of my trauma unit because, again, my brain was out. And it's very common, people that have been through certain acute trauma because of head injuries. It's, there's a lot of medicine, stuff like that. I remember very vividly going to the rehabilitation hospital because I remember the patient transport said, "My name's Kyle. I'll take you there." I said, "That's my girlfriend's brother's name." So that's when things started trying to fire. I remember going there and I was like, "Why are my mother and father in the same room? What's going on?" And I just, they said, you busted your pelvis, you crushed your eye, and you had a you had a brain injury. Well, I fortunately had my appendages, so I just could focus. Okay, great. I have my legs. I just can't walk right now. Can't walk right now. I didn't understand why I saw two of everything. I couldn't really move my hand. It just kind of, floated around. Couldn't move my eyes. And I just figured I'd figure it out. I was very isolated and I felt very alone. It was very dark, um very dark. It felt very isolated. I mean, it was like darkness. I always say the movie Never Ending Story, that's what it was like, the darkness. It's just always there. It was a cold, chill, scary, calming sensation. Just, you know closing my eyes and just feeling that wash over me was terrifying. I'm even getting chills now talking about it. But I realized that I needed to get through this. I remember struggling a lot, and I remember my dad was there, and I said, I can't do this, and he said, "You got to do it, pal." And just hearing him say that, so I can, it made me want to try more and do more. So,
Right.
um, every therapy is different. I had speech therapy, speech language pathology, occupational therapy, physical therapy. Speech therapy was the first one that was really hard for me because I felt like I was being treated like a child. Like, why are
Mhm.
you doing this to me? I can talk fine. And that's when I remember when they left, I was just arguing about this stupid worksheet. I was like, I wouldn't do that. I would manage construction for a living. I would never do it this way. She said, just please follow the things. And I got really upset. And that's when I realized again through CBT with my therapist that anger is a secondary emotion. And I was very angry. And anger can only come
Mhm.
out in generally three ways: yelling, physical, or crying. Well, I was crying. I was very angry. But for me, my trigger for anger, especially, is frustration or belittlement. And
Mhm.
nothing's really frustrating when you can't do anything yourself, or belittling when
Right.
people have to clean up after you.
Right.
So I was very low, very, very low. But, there was some great therapists there who mean the world to me and definitely helped me beyond belief, just trying to regain that independence. I always say to people, everybody knows what a physical therapist is. I hope nobody has to have ever know what a speech therapist or occupational is. But, physical therapy, people were like, "Oh, I'm so hard. Sorry you went through that." But for me, that was very powerful because I remember when I couldn't lift myself up, when I couldn't transfer, when I couldn't do certain things. Occupational was good, but it was also still teaching me, okay, here's how we're gonna have to hold a fork. Here's where we're gonna have to. I had to relearn how to use my eyes, like move my eyebrows up and down and then pick stuff up. I mean, it seems very low. And then speech therapy again was very hard, just trying to calm down, know my environment. What am I saying? What is my volume? Just trying to look at myself analytical. So it was very low. It was low. At the hospital, they have something called peer mentoring where former patients come in and they tell their
Mhm.
story. And I had to be taken out. I was in a lot of discomfort. I don't call it pain. I call it uncomfortable because pain has a lot of power over us. If we don't call it pain, it loses its power. But I was in a lot of discomfort that had to take me out. But I heard a woman speak, and she only spoke for about 5 minutes and spoke about a brain aneurysm and how It was left side, and they didn't understand what numbers and letters were anymore. And they were a math professor, and I'm like, I felt selfish. Like,
Wow.
why am I getting so upset? Like,
Wow.
I just can't calm down. But hearing them speak for 5 minutes really help inspire me to say, okay, I am going to get better because I want to help out others see they're not alone. I was discharged roughly 2 weeks later at home health. Really rough. Like I said, mom's basement. So we had to buy a wheelchair ramp, had to take the handles off the wheelchair, drop down commode. No, no dignity is all out the window.
Right.
Many homes are not really meant for ADA. They're not
Nope.
meant
Right.
for wheelchairs and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
my bed went in the living room, my couch, everything went in the other room, and that's where I was. So I didn't have a lot of options for home health because of my limitations in the house, but I did have speech therapy. So I did that. I did luminosity, anything I could do to kind of keep my mind going. I always say,
Right.
physical you can see physical gains. You can understand independence when you can do certain things alone. But sometimes behind our eyes is the hardest one because nobody knows what they're going through except the person going through it. So I try to do as much as I could. And I was able to get into an outpatient program roughly 6 months where, at 3 times a week, twice a week, every other week, blah, blah, blah. Learned to walk again, which was I remember walking July 15th, 2016. Very, very solid memories of that. I remember she said, you're not going to be in a cane, you're going to be in a walker. And I remember laughing. I said, yeah, right. I'm going to walk her right out of here. I'll tell you, those were the hardest 12 steps I ever took in my life. Just to think of a baby when they're walking, their bottom's moving and fall. That's exactly what it feels like, the gyroscope. But again, that's, and I tell people like how frustrated you get. You look down, this can't do, you can't do. We forget to look behind us about how far the journey's been. So
Yeah.
sometimes the pain, the discomfort, I always say is a small reminder about where I am now versus where I've been. I mean, fortunately, our bodies can't actually remember pain. They just fear pain. We can
Right.
only fear pain. It's a healthy fear I have, but I find if I don't talk about it, it doesn't actually exist. If I it does more I talk about it, I can start feeling it again. I am probably going to be discomfortable the rest of my life. It is what it is. I have a lot of metal in me all over the place. Can't change that.
Yeah.
But what I can do is just my response to the situation.
Exactly. I have to say that mind over matter is a huge thing when it comes to having to rehabilitate or come back from something like this. My mom had MS and was totally paralyzed several times, but she made herself get up. She had dad put bars down the hallway so she could get up out of that wheelchair and make herself take steps. It started out the first day she couldn't even take a step. But little by little, and after that, she was back on her feet, living life again. But she told me, she said, it's mind over matter. You make yourself do it because you have to, and you want to help other people who are going through this. I wish my mom could have had a podcast because she would have done what you're doing, for TBI, for MS, because she, like you, believes so much that helping others was the way to go.
Well,
And
I'm sorry she went through that, and thank you for trusting and sharing in that. It's hard. I mean, I never had a lot of confidence in myself growing up. I just, I've learned later that I fail forward.
me too.
That's what I do. But I never actually said, why me? Because again, I didn't think highly of myself. So I felt very negative towards me. But I did learn, I think I said this before, from another mentor, why not me? So that's what he says. So I always say, why not me? If anybody can do it, it's me. So that's why I've kind of, taken on this mantle of something that happened. Now, I mean, it's the 320, so it was literally 10 years and 5 days. Yeah. So last Sunday was the traumaversary. It was a lot. And, I used to always do like an apology tour, but I'm so sorry for all the people I heard, this and that. but I've tried to now restructure it and just say, look at what I've done since the past
Yes,
year. Look who I've helped.
exactly.
Look what I've done. Look, meeting congressional leaders, musicians, podcasts, artists, you name it. Look what I've done because of that, because I'm willing to take that vulnerability on myself to courage and strength to others, that they are not alone in any of these journeys. And that's the best thing about my story is, my story can be heard by many people, not just people with TBI survivors,
Hmm.
because it is very true, the struggle of rehabilitation, the struggle of isolation, the struggle of all this stuff that many people can pull, tidbits from, because that is the different challenges we go through. And that is how, you know, this collective world is, that we all kind of come together and just, if we share our experiences, we find that we are not alone in this. You are not alone. And we like to use a lot of, social media likes to say, oh, it's okay to not be okay. All these different sayings, and it's all true, but also it's not just a saying when you step up and try to do something about it. And that's why I'm fortunate enough to be with you ladies here, and others, just to be part of a greater chance to heal, because I've learned that healing is not a zero-sum game, and that I'm
Yep.
always choosing to heal. That's why I'm trying to do this, because sure, things suck sometimes. I can't move my hand, my eyes drift, while I get weird headaches. Sure. But I remember a patient asked me once, she said, when did you become 100%? And that was like a slap in the face. I was like, I'm not. But I said, I'm beyond it, because I can help people now.
Well, there's a reason you're still here, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Exactly. Yep. So, what do you think people do not understand about living with a brain injury?
I don't think people necessarily understand that some people feel like they treat people a little differently, or they're a different person, and they are the same person. They are just, life is different. I've learned, again, when I talked to the musician Christina Scavia, she said, you were a different person 20 years ago. You're right. I mean, if that was your life there, doesn't mean you're a different person, but that was another part of your life. This is just part of, I always say to patients, this is just a new chapter of your
Hmm.
story. This didn't end in a period. It's just a comma. It keeps going. So trying to figure out the narrative of it, and that's why I try to, again, I say to people, just control the narrative, because when I speak about it, it takes the power away from someone else, doubt, fear, whatever, and I'm the one that's now controlling where I am and how I'm healing through it.
Yeah, exactly. That's my firm belief. That's the whole reason I started my podcast, is because I believe that stories have the power to heal, and
Yep,
every person's story needs to be shared, because there's somebody out there that will get something, some little piece from your story that will help them in some way, shape, or form.
exactly.
I've I've done some really cool things since it, and I've lived a few lifetimes in 10 years. But like when I got to interview, a lead Italian singer, people in their community reached out to me from Germany, Australia, about
Wow,
how trauma affected them, and plus the States. And then through that, again, that's how I've done this different advocating. And I've been unfortunate enough to be on other podcasts and saying that someone's listening to you in, the Middle East somewhere, or in Europe. So we can make good out of the crazy social media and the internet world if we kind of, again, create our own trajectory. And I'm grateful for my conversations, that again, people can hear differently, and hopefully keep helping them heal.
Exactly. Yeah. So you are also a mental health advocate. Can you talk about that? Tell us a little bit about your work in doing that. I have a lot of experience with mental health, and the fact that our mental health system needs a total revamp.
very badly. We don't have a mental health system. You can't
Yeah,
even
it's
you can't even get an appointment. I mean, it's
well,
horrendous.
So that's a good little segue. So I had a therapist, like I said, my trauma happened, didn't see her, obviously was in the hospital. I came out the first week out, I saw her, and then literally 4 days later, she had a heart attack and had to stop doing it.
Oh,
Oh my
So you
gosh.
talk about I had a
wow.
safety net that helped me get there. And I mean, I was just like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I went and looked at different resources like Psychology Today, whatever, and found the different things. Who works with CBT? Who sets my insurance? And I remember having like five names. I emailed all of them or called them and or both. Three of them didn't respond. Two of them didn't respond. Two of them said they're not taking anybody, and then one of them said, "I can see patients, but I only do it during work hours." And I said to myself, my mental health is very important, so I am going to do this. And I still see her today. I mean, I see her, again, over 10 years. I mean, it'll be 10 years in July if I'm seeing her, but it's still there. So, what does it mean to be an advocate? It means to be outspoken. It means to be willing to share how the struggles were for you and how maybe we got through them and never backing down from it. I mean, my mother was a union vice president, so I've always had a big, loud voice, a big personality. So I utilize my trauma and my journey to help, advocate for others. Again, through the various through the hospital. I'm a trauma survivors network, which is a national organization now. Started in Fairfax, now is literally around the globe in Canada and Australia. 260 trauma centers across the globe. And I'm again part of that network where I can speak to other survivors. And we might have very different modalities that did this different injuries, but we all speak very similar language of trauma, isolation. How do we navigate through that? So working
Right.
with them helped me, heal myself and realize that I have ways to help others. So that pushed me towards it. And then in my company in 2019 decided to switch insurance to an awful insurance. They didn't cover my therapist, and then I remember
Oh,
going there, and I remember them saying, "Well, we have other therapy on our network," and I said, "You're exactly right. Let me send a new babysitter to your house. You want a new dog
Mm-hmm.
sitter?" Like it's not just this is someone that saw me through trauma. So
right.
I mean, I spent the year of my trauma. I spent roughly $15,000 in all the medical bills and that. There was a lot of other issues, reason why, but nonetheless, I spent that much. In 2019, I spent 27,000 because of the lack of coverage of different mental health services. That is
Yep.
wrong. So I saw my state delegate and I talked to them about it, and we were trying to work together. And the pandemic happened, which was great. So fortunately, my company at the time went to a better health tier like it had before, which saved me. I always joke that saved me it's like a $12,000 raise. Then they decided to cut our pay 20%.
Right.
But hey, the but through that, I realized I've taken my pain and my financial struggles to do it. I am not like I'm not burning money in front of me. I'm not, I mean, I am doing very well for my education, for where I was, but it struggles, sometimes making out of the meat, but I realize how important my mental health is. So that's how I began talking to others. I did a brain injury speech at a brain injury conference, and that was very powerful. Again, talking to others in trauma, and I did webinars. I've done all this stuff. I went to Congress through Trauma Survivors Network and spoke to different lawmaker staff about the importance of having a national trauma. And I'm currently now in talks with my state delegates in Virginia, trying to find out if we can make it a little better path forward for people. Because again, every time a travesty happens, it seems to happen quite a bit in our country, but every time something
Mm-hmm.
happens, it's a mental health problem. I was okay. How are you going to fix it? I can tell you how we can fix it, but you have to listen. You have to be okay. So I forgot. It's like No Surprises. I think it's called No Surprises Act. But when you go into therapy, like the therapist has to basically tell insurance how long do they think this is going to take,
Mm-hmm.
because insurance doesn't want to pay for it, and that
Right.
is wrong because
Yep.
I don't know about you, but every day can be very different and you can have a bad day.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
insurance doesn't want to cover a lot of that unless people are medically necessary or at risk. The problem is you don't want to be at that point because you don't know where you were before. Not that everybody should go to therapy. I mean, everybody should, I believe, should be willing to speak about it, but it's not for everybody because your therapy is not about going in there and bitching, complaining for an hour. It's not like that. If
Right.
that's the case, you're not in therapy. You are just, in a sewing circle at that point. You're not doing, I mean, it is good to vocalize it because when you hear yourself say it, you can analyze your problem, but it is hard work. And I think many people don't want to accept that it is hard work to get through it. So I'm talking to my state senator as well as my state House of Delegates member. I want to talk to them about finding ways to create a path forward for people with insurance that doesn't want to cover. I mean, personally, I mean, I think that, I mean, insurance companies get lots of subsidies from the federal government, a lot of
Yep.
Yep.
money, and they
A
take it all
ton.
out of mine. I mean, they don't care
Mhm.
about me, but we pass these bills for different funding in our country for social services, stuff like that. But you know, what we could do is, even if it's not in network, I personally believe that if my insurance company would pen it's $150 for me, my insurance would only cover 100. Great. I should be always allowed to put that 100 towards it. Not a deductible, just there. I will pay for it, and I will get. That's my expectation to be because I am spending it because I am not safe. My therapist will say this is needed, this is done, I'm doing something. I'm not just giving them money. They do have to do checklists to make sure is therapy working for you. Because if it's not working and you're going to therapy, that is wrong. It's not. It's
Right.
Right.
wrong for a lot of different things. So that's what I firmly believe that we could do. Because if I choose to go to a therapist that is not in network, that is a choice that I'm making. But that should not hinder me from not getting services. Because when they switched my insurance, I tried to go every other week and it started or once a month. I started not liking what I was feeling. I stopped like, demons can happen real fast and they can get
Yep.
in your head and
Yes.
you're like, all right, I don't want to be in. I didn't like the paths I was thinking and going towards. I was like, I don't want that. So I said, you know what? Might as well do it. Why not me? So I had to do it and spent tens of thousands since then, but it is what it is. I'm still figuring it out, and my hope is that when I speak to others, that's how I kind of did the little link tree gift of perspective. I made a little business card, QR code, blah blah blah. But I'm able to talk to someone, and actually in Virginia, there was we had a very good victory for Virginia governor, so it was a big victory party. I'm helped with the precinct, and actually the state senator was there. Our United States senator was there. The United States congressperson was there, along with my state representatives, and it was great to talk to them. And I actually heard from the state. My congressional senator emailed me and said, "Thank you for the work you're doing. Let me know how we can be of support." So, what it takes to be an advocate is speaking about it. Everyone can be an advocate when you have a bad day and you talk to others about it. You're trying to help someone else in that situation. That is what that is what an advocate is. Mental health advocate is, for me, I'm taking that on because obviously I'm a big guy. I'm very, tough looking, this and that, but I'm obviously very sensitive and I'm willing to talk about it. And men have a real hard time speaking about it because
Yeah.
machismo and toxic masculinity is a real thing. And I've been called
Yes.
horrible names because I cry or I get upset or anything else. That is not true. It's not fair. But
Mm-mm.
though I always hear those insults, I always hear that stuff and I self doubt. But so that's why I also speak where I do because, you know, men, because we've also in trauma survivors, we work with different service people like EMT, and there is unfortunately people that don't make it. They decide to, you know, they decide to do something they can't come back from
Right.
because
Right.
they're not willing. They can't talk about it. And again, you're all right. Just drink something. You'll be okay. And then forgetting that it just takes that time where someone's having that darkness to do it. So being an advocate is being human, being honest, being genuine, and being compassionate. I mean, we can always, what I learned through therapy, always each other, three things to each other: compassion, acceptance, and forgiveness. We can do that for everybody. It's, I always try to always look at it like a water till, like, are all of them even? Some people are very, compassionate, but they don't forgive, so there's a difference. I always try to, you know, let it be, as the Beatles said, and just
Yeah.
let
Exactly.
it be.
Yep. Same. Pretty laid back. So, Nicholas, what helped get you through those dark moments when, say, it was just you, therapist wasn't available?
So in those moments it was music. It was very much music. Again,
I figured.
that was like the lifesaver, because people write music all sorts, and there's boppy music, whatever the case may be. For some reason I like real dark lyrics. I don't know why. I guess it's my brooding personality. That's why I'm a yin and a yang. I like to be very positive, but I like the other things. But I always felt that people wrote a lot of harder lyrics, are dirges. They are about honesty. They are about real emotions. And
Hmm.
hearing a musician write it, sing it, maybe you realize that you are not alone in whatever you're going through, that someone was able to put my feelings to, music. And it was through
Exactly.
that, I never would have thought I'd be where I am now, again, 10 years later. And I love my favorite band, Type O Negative. I never got to see them. I always put it off. I kept putting it off. And I remember going to see them in 2009. I had work. I'll get it later, and I get a next tour. Well, Peter Steele died of a heart aneurysm in 2010. So I never got to see him in April, and it crushed me. And I realized, like, when I got out of the hospital, I was like, life could change like that.
Before we continue, I want to share something really special we've created for this community. If you've ever listened to an episode and felt something deeper, like a moment that stayed with you or a story that made you reflect on your own life, we wanted to give you a place to go with that. We've officially launched our Travel Time Stories membership, where you can go beyond listening and become part of the experience. Inside the membership, you'll get access to the Story Circle, our private community where we reflect on each episode through guided journal prompts, share our stories, and connect through monthly meetups. There are also additional tiers with opportunities to go even deeper, from storytelling and sharing your voice to being part of the creative journey behind the scenes and joining us on our yearly group travels. If this speaks to you, you can join us through the link in the show notes or visit our website, traveltimestories.com. We would truly love to have you join the community.
I will always do something to do it. So seeing concerts, talking to people, and just reaching out to more is how I've been able to, again, engage with the community. One of my favorite active bands, Kuna Coil. I mean, her voice is, I remember hearing her voice when my brain was out. Like, I remember hearing that sound. So, speaking to her about my journey she was very honored, and the whole band is super nice. But I mean, heck, you gotta do travel stories. I mean, I went to London to see them play, and I met people from like
Wow.
10, 15 other countries. It's really, I mean, I'm traveling to, they're going all around the world, country, and starting this week. And, I'm seeing them in 6 stops, and it's great because I've met friends that I've just gone to the concert, the VIP, whatever, and talked to them. And now I talk to them still to this day. I mean, we'll text each other. I mean, I hate certain meta things, let's just say. So I'm not on Facebook. I try to be out of all that stuff, but I am on Instagram because that's how I talk to the band. That's how I talk to these people from around the globe. I don't want I don't want WhatsApp and stuff, but that's how I talk to them. And it's been really rewarding for me. But it is really neat when you are having a bad day, or when you voice your stuff, and how much you appreciate them. So there isn't many pictures. All the pictures of me after my trauma were deleted, except for one. My father didn't want to see it. I wished I had more just so I can see what it was,
Right.
also to see the before and after. But there's only
Right.
one picture of me, and I think I mean, you might have seen that on the, but it was me holding a comic book. I mean, my eyes are totally glassed over. You can see the horrible thing. But in that comic that I'm holding, and again, it was written well before my accident. Whatever collection I had, my girlfriend put it in my hand. But the one picture it's Thor. It's with Thor was it was actually very much it's what the movie Thor: Love and Thunder was based on. Jane Foster, she had cancer, but when she picked up Thor's hammer, the cancer was gone, and she could live with something else. But when she put the hammer down, since cancer is a poison, it came.
Right.
The chemo is a poison, it came back. So, but whenever she was stuck, she could do this to get out. Well, I talked to the writer of it, Jason Aaron, very wonderful man, and
Oh
he
my
was.
Oh.
I was
gosh.
at a comic show, um, and I told him that, and I told him like how powerful it was, like this, and I'm like, think of a metaphor. I was literally trapped in my brain, and then this, and he was just in awe. So he picked up a comic and signed it for me and said, all hail the power of Nicholas. I mean, really nice
Wow.
gentleman. And I actually, at that same comic convention in 2019, I met another patient. I could speak about them now because they are a trauma survivor. They do a lot of advocacy work, but they were run over by a vehicle. They were body was split in half. I mean,
Oh my
airlifted,
gosh.
almost died. I mean, should have been dead. But but they actually currently work at the hospital. They are they work to help others because they saw their path and their life differently. But in that room when I met them, they had it was a Batman backpack from a nephew, whatever. And I remember seeing the writer of Batman, Tom King. And I said, "What would Batman say?" And he picked up a comic and it says, "It's okay to be scared. Everyone gets scared. Now's the chance to be brave, Batman."
Perfect.
Tom King used to work with soldiers with PTSD, but actually, that literally on Saturday this past week, right before my trauma anniversary, I saw Tom King again. And the hospital wouldn't let me give that gift to the patient, so I got a print signed now from him from it. And I remember talking to a story, and he was, I mean, very speechless. And I said, "Well, how much owe you this?" He's like, "Nothing. It's for you." And him and the artist did that because they said how important it is what I'm doing. And in that same
Mhm.
convention, my favorite artist growing up, he's doing the Doctor Strange comic, and really neat. I love the art, Chris Pachalo. But I talked to him, and I said he doesn't do many shows, like 3 shows a year or 2 or 3 shows a year. Talked to him, and I said, "Listen, that movie Doctor Strange meant so much to me because I remember when car accident happens, and he's trying to relearn. He's struggling with the occupational therapist, Doctor Benedict
Yeah.
Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange, to try to use his hands. And I remember being in tears in the theater watching that about how real it was. And the artist was just, I mean, I mean, he gave me a big hug and, shook my hand and just, you know, and I gave him my card and he said, "I like that gift of perspective." And they said about losses they felt and how it's happened to them, and understands that things are very different. Sometimes letting little things roll off of us is okay, and that's why we look at things differently. So, and I remember seeing him on Sunday, and he said, "I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're here." And it's nice. So again, through that, different ports of media or anything I do, help me when it's been dark, when it's been lonely. I'm a very big nerd, as everybody can see behind me. My nerd street cred's really high. I do a lot of tabletop gaming, but that gaming was super important for my recovery because before my injury, when I had this horrible separation divorce, I did not want to be online playing video games. Nothing's wrong with that, but it's not for me. I didn't want to be at home
Right.
online. I wanted to socialize
Right.
with people. So I pushed myself to go out, go into stores, meet people, just get out. And then my trauma happened. So, I mean, I would go all the time, but then all of a sudden, "Where's Nicholas at?" Nobody knew. And then I come back in and I'm in a wheelchair, the lights, the sound, it was hard. But I made like I moved all the pieces with my left hand. You're doing, analytical and creative thought. That's very hard for right side brain injury. So I did everything. I made it a rehabilitation in that. But through that, I felt very included, and I want to make sure, and I do make sure that I can help provide an environment for people to be comfortable and safe, because everybody's going through something. And the company I volunteer with, Paizo Organized Play, Pathfinder, they offer a very inclusive environment, and I make sure when I go to places that everyone, doesn't matter orientation, age, gender, whatever, I want them to feel comfortable, because that is what in the end of the day is. And if we all treat each other just like you would want to be treated, it tends to really change someone's. Like, we had a player who was trans, and the person who was running is, I didn't know what to call him, I was like, just call them by their name and you will never have an issue. Their
Right?
name is all you need to say.
Right.
Yep. How simple is that? Mind
Yeah.
blowing. Just use somebody's name.
Yep. You never have to remember, just what do you remember, and I
Right?
spoke about, in one of my speeches I did about, I always said, people, you might forget what people said, might forget what they did, but you'll never forget how people make you feel. And,
Mm-hmm.
feeling included, feeling seen, feeling accepted, feeling safe is
Yep.
very important, and something that I
Exactly.
can do with confidence to help give that to others, because of my circumstance, because of my, you name it, I'll do it. And that's something that I've been very in awe of how much, again, I've done in this little time. And when I go to these trade shows or conventions, speaking to others about my journey, and then really them reach out to me, artists, musicians, whatever, and just thanking me for that, because they don't have to write about me in their lyrics or anything else. But I interviewed Christina, and she was on a major YouTube podcast like a few weeks later, and that was published, like, because she said, she didn't say me by name, but she said, I met a fan who had brain surgery, but had their music help them. And it was our conversation. So even though she didn't drop my name, our conversation helped, do that. And when I saw them in show, and one of the last show right before my webinar, they have a song, Nothing Stands in Our Way. And then she texted me, she's like, I was pointing at you. I was, because she saw me in the stands. And it was neat. And their latest album was about anxiety, fear, and everything going on in the world, and depression. So that was a very long, what do I use to help me recover? And the answer is a lot, but it is creative avenues is what it is. Music is the fastest and most readily available, but other creative means is how I've been able to really get through when it gets dark. And I do recognize myself, and I realize if I push people away, something's not right with me. So I need to always remember, what am I engaging with? So, and then again, years later, talking here has been really healing for me and helping me see, look where I was and look where I am. I mean, Emilia Clarke from Game of Thrones, she
Mm-hmm.
had a brain aneurysm. She had multiple brain surgeries,
Mm-hmm.
and she recovered obviously fantastically, but she recognized there was major gaps in brain injury. So she founded saneyou.org. They're a United Kingdom's based company, or organization. And again, they help with brain injury awareness, brain injury services, and just different support. But they actually feature me as an advocate from, you know, and like, how cool is that? And I did a study with them, my wife and I, with the university that they helped set up, Cambridge, Binghamton in United Kingdom. I did a study with them. So again, how cool has that been? Because I was willing to say, why not me? And step forward and in front of it and advocate for myself. And therefore, I advocate for others.
Yep.
Exactly. Exactly. So you've spoken about finding your gifts in your trauma, which is a powerful perspective. What do you mean by that?
So my therapist taught me, she's like, what gifts did it give you? What gifts? And, I'm angry about it a lot, but my first brain injury speech, right? We do a mentoring speech, 10 minutes, blah, blah, blah. And I was not really walking yet when my birthday in August. So I wanted to do it in October when I was able to walk more. And I did it at a park and I wanted to record it. My girlfriend was like, why do you want to record this? Well, your family came up. These people moved now, this and that's. So I did this brain injury speech and I actually had my hospital therapists were there and they were there to help me celebrate where I was. And at the end of it, I said everybody's favorite, lunging and balance exercise. Now the therapists are here, and that's where I proposed to my wife, and
Whoa, that's
it
awesome.
was amazing. But those therapists were there at my proposal, and those therapists were there at my wedding. So that is what that gift is. Look at what I've gained from it. And I always tell people I wouldn't change one thing. Only thing I would change is the potential fear that my family felt or the pain they felt. But I know if
Right.
I change one thing, I wouldn't be here right now speaking to you lovely ladies. Again, look at all the stuff in the what I've done and look what I keep doing and keep challenging myself to do. I wouldn't do anything. And that's what the gifts of all the terrible things that can happen to each other in our lives. That's what we can look at. If we look at all the bad, we will just be looking at the bad. But
Yeah.
I would say in the hospital, I said, if I don't give negative breath, it doesn't live. Meaning, if I don't talk about it, it can't have
Right.
power over me. So I do, that's how I've been able to look at the gifts around me, the people that I've helped, the relationships that I made because of my trauma. I would not want to not have those therapists in my life. I love them dearly. I text them on Christmas, their birthdays, and every year on the traumaversary. I always tell them, and they
Oh,
tell me they love me and how important I've been to them in their career. Because again, when we can give that gift of that thank you, can
Mm-hmm.
really change someone. Is
oh
this the
yeah.
right thing they're doing?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow. That's
That's
amazing.
wonderful.
What a wonderful proposal. You did good.
Mm-hmm. So, Nicholas, if someone listening right now is struggling, maybe with trauma, identity loss, or mental health, what would you want to say to them?
That I will say that I promise we're not alone, and I'm grateful to be on your team. And I'll say that to patients. I'm on your team. I'm grateful to be here because I am with you now too. And this gave me this ability to do this. So I'm grateful that I'm on your team and that you're on my team because this is what this is about. That I'm grateful to express my heart. I'm grateful to choke up in a podcast, cry, and whatever the case may be, because I want people to know that I am on their team. If they need me, I will help however I can. I mean, I've learned that I'm a good connector and I can help people find resources and support they need. I mean, Trauma Survivors Network is for mine's physical trauma. It's a different. Everybody has different trauma, and I have different resources on my link tree. But there is sources out there for it. There is closed, different groups for stroke support, through brain injury support, and Facebook and other. But asking yourself that question is important and asking out because I always say social media did so much damage for so much. But long ago, when there was a problem, we would talk to a doctor. We would talk to someone else
Right.
about the problem. Now we
Yeah,
just go online and said, oh, no, I must be right because everybody else feels this way. That is, it's okay to need to find a group, but ensure that the group is helping us out, helping you be healthy out. And I love being able to help support others and help people find a resource to them. Again, a cool podcast to listen to that might inspire them when they don't know they need it. And
yeah,
that's what matters. It is that gift that we do. And the nice thing is this will last forever. And someone in 5, 10 years could listen to this and like, wow, that's really neat. Let me look up into this and see how much things have grown from that.
exactly.
Exactly. I am so thankful that you were close to a level 1 trauma center. That type of trauma, a regular hospital probably could not have helped you. So, very thankful for that. And I want to tell you, I would want you on my team, Nicholas.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Ann. I appreciate it. And
exactly.
I'm glad
Exactly.
to be there. Thank you. Thank
This
you.
is the second time we're crying on an episode.
Yeah.
We've only done one other episode where we cry. Oh gosh.
I'm glad to be on the team, and I'm glad to have you on there. And again, if I can ever help, and I know again everybody has their own journeys, and trauma is the number one cause of death between 1 and 45. Technically it's guns between 1 and
Yes.
17, but what do I know? But when we speak about trauma, so I did in my old company, we had town hall. May is National Trauma Awareness Day, and you know I spoke to town hall in May, and I had people that reached out to me and said how trauma touched their lives, about spouses, relatives, whatever, car accidents, attempted, whatever happened to them, trying brain injuries, head injuries, whatever. That is, trauma affects a lot more, and that's important for it. And that's the nice thing about my group. We meet once a month as a support group, but we also meet as a volunteer, twice a month. We go in there and we speak to patients, we speak to nurses, whatever. Actually, I again, I have a lot of gifts. So on this past Christmas Eve. I lost my mom a couple years ago. It's been tough, blah blah blah. It's been tough, and I
So
always like to
sorry.
try to do. Thank you. I always like to do a lot. So I used to do on Thanksgiving. I used to go to the hospital and bring food for the nurses and staff, and things have changed a lot. Now I do stuff with my family and my wife and other friends and my brother. But now I actually went on Christmas Eve and I went to the trauma center and I brought the nurses and the staff something, and I talked to a couple of patients. And that's the gift I have. Help is a gift I freely give. So
Yeah.
understanding this is a way for me to help others is healing for me, and it does show someone that there is someone out there that sees that. At the end of the day, we want to be seen, and
Mm-hmm.
my trauma told me that I thought I was invisible. That was a big lie. I was not invisible.
Yeah.
And
No.
I'm willing to say I see you, and I'm glad to see you, and I'm glad you're here and I'm glad to be here too.
I know that those nurses and the staff appreciated you doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime you've had let's call it an extended hospital stay, you get to know those people and you see how hard they work and you realize what all they do for patients. Some of them, it gets personal for them and for
Mm-hmm.
the patients as well. So those people are a godsend for us. I thank
It's
every day that we have, our nurses, our doctors, they work so hard.
I and it's a shame how they get treated sometimes by
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
others, but like
Yep.
it's interesting. So every head injury is different. I was in the my brain injury, again, compulsivity, so I had to have a basically a watch, someone to watch me, make sure. And I remember talking to my day nurse and just talking to her, and I saw her like 2 years later when I was going to the hospital mentoring. I heard the voice, and I was like, I said her name and she was like, "Oh my gosh, it's again," but that kindness stuck with me. That it showed me that there. And if I could afford it, if I didn't have the golden handcuffs, I would work. I want to be a recreational therapist to help help people, brain injury people, just show a path forward. Actually, the other person that was on my interview with Christina, Andrew Davey, him and I became great friends, and he saw me as a mentor in the hospital, brain aneurysm himself. And through that, I followed him, and he was the one that told me about Same You. They featured him, but he actually became a social worker to work with brain injury survivors as well. So
Wow.
we don't know what brought us here now, but I know people again that I'm good friends with, a trauma survivor now works at the hospital. Another one who was involved in in a car fatality with other, obviously someone, now they are going to be a trauma surgeon. Again, that's the
That's
catalyst
amazing.
that did something that took someone to that next step. Because, why not me is a good way of saying it. And just when we see that someone out there, what they're doing says, I want to do this too. I want to be the change we want to see.
Yeah. Well, Nicholas, you're very much appreciated, and we're so
Yes.
glad that you're now part of our family here at Travel Time Stories. And your story is incredibly powerful. And I know it's going to
Yes.
touch a lot of people when they hear it, not just because of what you went through, but because of how you've chosen to move forward from what you went through. You've taken something life altering, you turned it into something meaningful, and that's something so many people need to hear. So thank you for your honesty, your vulnerability, and for reminding us that even in our hardest moments, there is still the possibility of growth, purpose, and hope.
Exactly. Nicholas, where can listeners find out more about your work and you?
Well, I wish I was a better social, I wish I had a better sales pitch, but I have a link tree, a gift of perspective. I have a YouTube channel where I put my various, a couple of the speeches I've done, and I try to link, wonderful podcasts I've been on, webinars, whatever different stuff. But the link tree is where I have there. And I also have an email, gifts of perspective at Gmail to help be able to connect someone with something they might need. And it's been a really neat way of embracing the world and again, choosing how we want to tell our own story.
Yeah. To everyone listening, if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it. We'll have Nicholas's information in the show notes, and it will also be on our website, traveltimestories.com. Each of our guests have a dedicated page on our site with all their social contact information, so be sure to check it out.
And until next time, keep traveling your stories and keep making memories for life.